The economy works like a simple machine. Let's start with the simplest part of the economy, transactions. Every time you buy something, you create a transaction. It's the building block of the economic machine. The biggest buyer and seller is the government, which consists of two important parts: a central government that collects taxes and spends money, and a central bank, which is different from other buyers and sellers because it controls the amount of money and credit in the economy. Credit is the most important part of the economy. Credit is tricky because it has different names. As soon as credit is created, it immediately turns into debt. When a borrower receives credit, he is able to increase his spending. And remember, spending drives the economy. This is because one person's spending is another person's income. In a transaction, you have to give something in order to get something. And how much you get depends on how much you produce. Productivity matters most in the long run, but credit matters most in the short run. This is because productivity growth doesn't fluctuate much, so it's not a big driver of economic swings. Debt is. Debt swings occur in two big cycles. One takes about 5 to 8 years, and the other takes about 75 to 100 years. In this economy, the only way I can increase my spending is to increase my income, which requires me to be more productive and do more work. In order to buy something you can't afford, you need to spend more than you make. Money is what you settle transactions with. The reality is that most of what people call money is actually credit. Remember, in an economy without credit, the only way to increase your spending is to produce more. But in an economy with credit, you can also increase your spending by borrowing. If you borrow money to buy a big TV, it doesn't generate income for you to pay back the debt. But if you borrow money to, say, buy a tractor, and that tractor lets you harvest more crops and earn more money, then you can pay back your debt and improve your living standards. Suppose you earn $100,000 a year and have no debt. You are creditworthy enough to borrow $10,000, say on a credit card. So you can spend $110,000 even though you only earn $100,000. When the amount of spending and incomes grow faster than the production of goods, prices rise. When prices rise, we call this inflation. The central bank doesn't want too much inflation because it causes problems. Seeing prices rise, it raises interest rates. With higher interest rates, fewer people can afford to borrow money, and the cost of existing debts rises. Because people borrow less and have higher debt repayments, they have less money left over to spend. When people spend less, prices go down. We call this deflation. Economic activity decreases, and we have a recession. If the recession becomes too severe and inflation is no longer a problem, the central bank will lower interest rates to cause everything to pick up again. With low interest rates, debt repayments are reduced and borrowing and spending pick up, and we see another expansion. When credit is easily available, there's an economic expansion. When credit isn't easily available, there's a recession. People cut spending, incomes fall, credit disappears, asset prices drop, banks get squeezed, the stock market crashes, social tensions rise as incomes fall and debt repayments rise, borrowers get squeezed. No longer credit-worthy, credit dries up, and borrowers can no longer borrow enough money to make their debt repayments. In a recession, lowering interest rates works to stimulate borrowing. However, in a deleveraging, lowering interest rates doesn't work because interest rates are already low and soon hit 0%. So the stimulation ends. The problem is debt burdens are too high and they must come down. There are 4 ways this can happen. 1, people, businesses, and governments cut their spending. 2, debts are reduced through defaults and restructurings. 3, wealth is redistributed from the haves to the have-nots. And finally, 4, the central bank prints new money. Usually, spending is cut first. This is often referred to as austerity, so the debt burden continues to get worse. All of this impacts the central government because lower incomes and less employment means the government collects fewer taxes. If the depression continues, social disorder can break out. This situation can lead to political change that can sometimes be extreme. In the 1930s, this led to Hitler coming to power, war in Europe, and depression in the United States. Credit disappears, people don't have enough money. People are desperate for money, and you remember who can print money? The central bank can. Having already lowered its interest rates to nearly zero, it's forced to print money. Unlike cutting spending, debt reduction, and wealth redistribution, printing money is inflationary and stimulative. Inevitably, the central bank prints new money out of thin air and uses it to buy financial assets and government bonds. It helps drive up asset prices, which makes people more creditworthy. However, this only helps those who own financial assets. You see, the central bank can print money, but it can only buy financial assets. The central government, on the other hand, can buy goods and services and put money in the hands of the people, but it can't print money. So in order to stimulate the economy, the two must cooperate. By buying government bonds, the central bank essentially lends money to the government, allowing it to run a deficit and increase spending on goods and services through its stimulus programs and unemployment benefits. This increases people's income as well as the government's debt. This is a very risky time. Policymakers need to balance the four ways that debt burdens come down. The deflationary ways need to balance with the inflationary ways in order to maintain stability. In order to turn things around, the central bank needs to not only pump up income growth, but get the rate of income growth higher than the rate of interest on the accumulated debt. Basically, income needs to grow faster than debt grows. When incomes begin to rise, borrowers begin to appear more creditworthy. And when borrowers appear more creditworthy, lenders begin to lend money again. It takes roughly a decade or more for debt burdens to fall and economic activity to get back to normal. So, in summary, there are 3 rules of thumb that I'd like you to take away from this. First, don't have debt rise faster than income. Second, don't have income rise faster than productivity. And third, do all that you can to raise your productivity